What's going on, YouTube? This is my 2024 Ducati Panigale V4. My name's Thought Taken, and today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 best motorcycles that you can buy brand new on sale today. And before I even take this bike out, number 5 is going to be the Kawasaki 636 ZX6R. That is hands down one of the best value for dollar bikes that you can buy on sale today. But the amount of power that you get out of that bike for the price is kind of unmatched, to be quite honest with you. This is my friend's girlfriend's 2024 ZX6R in all black, and it is a sweet looking bike. I love what they do with the update for this year. They also added a small but awesome high quality screen on this bike for around, I think, $11,000 or $12,000 MSRP. You're getting a awesome motorcycle with 120 horsepower, great suspension, great brakes. I owned one of these bikes about 2 years ago, and to be honest, I'd buy it again. These are awesome bikes for the value. They hold their value pretty well. I sold mine, I think, for $8,500 with 11,000 miles on it, and for like a year of riding and that many miles, like, it's not a bad deal at all. It's actually kind of good when you think about it. I mean, think about the amount of smiles. There's very minimal amount of maintenance that you had to do. I think all I did was really just tire and oil changes. It was a pretty good buyers and owners experience. Oh yeah, so I definitely recommend buying one of these bikes if you guys are interested in getting the sport bikes. However, I would not recommend this as a beginner bike. And I think only one of the motorcycles on the list today is going to be a beginner bike, and I think it's going to really surprise you guys because I still really like that bike, even though it's a beginner bike. And of course, we're getting right into it because I really don't want to try to make this video clickbaity at all. Next up on the list is going to be my 2023 BMW S1000RR. And I know what you're thinking, why is one of the bikes that you currently own number 4 on the list? Well, there's a reason why I keep this bike around. So BMW is known for making kind of boring motorcycles. They make a lot of the Boxer Twins, and those bikes are famous for being kind of boring. However, when BMW came out with their inline 4, the main criticism that it gets from a lot of people is that the motor is boring. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The BMW S1000 is, in my opinion, one of the best motorcycles to ride, or at least one of the best super bikes to ride around the city, because of how reasonable it is. Meanwhile, this thing is one of the craziest to ever ride around the city just because it hates riding around the city. It's not meant for it. It's meant to go racing, which I'm going to throw it in street mode. Today's very windy out. Not really ideal for riding conditions, but it is sunny, and I will take that. It's nice, it's warm enough, it's sunny enough that I'm just gonna ride it, whatever. No one else wants to ride it today because you can just see it's a little, I mean, this is not that bad right now, but it was pretty, the trees were like sideways this morning. So, good enough for me. I don't really care. And just so you guys are aware, I have been riding for about 5 years now. I've gone through countless motorcycles, around 13 to 14 motorcycles over the years. And so I think I have a little bit of experience when it comes to deciding whether a bike is good or not. So the S1000, having all of the power and potential that it has, along with being an excellent street bike around the city that is pretty easy to tame, I think there's a lot of worth to that. And yes, it's one of the more expensive bikes out there, but I think the power combined with the usability of that bike and the electronics and everything amazing about it makes it worth it. And I think the next bike on this list is really going to surprise some people, especially coming from me. Alright, number 2 on my list is going to be the Yamaha MT-07. Be kind of weird to a lot of people, but hear me out here. For how cheap that you can find that motorcycle, I know I'm talking about new motorcycles here, but on used, on like Marketplace and stuff, you can find those bikes for as little as $5,000 for a nice one. For an early model year MT-07, keep in mind they really haven't changed anything on the new ones besides the dash. If you don't care about having a clear liquid LCD screen and you're cool with like the old ones, then I think they're fine. They're fantastic motorcycles for the price. You really can't beat it. You get about 70 horsepower. It's an excellent little wheelie machine. They go pretty reasonably fast. I think it's the most motorcycle ever. I mean, if you're looking for a cheap way to get into a motorcycle, the MT-07 is probably the best place to start. I think it's even better than the Yamaha R7, which is a bike a lot of people seem to like just because it looks like these big fancy sport bikes, but in reality, it's just a spicier version of the MT-07. I think the bad suspension that is on the MT-07 actually works for the bike because it makes it more interesting because of that uncertainty, but you're still only working with like 70 horsepower, which is like not all that powerful on a motorcycle, so I think it's great. And not only is it a great motorcycle for someone who's more experienced, but I think it's also a bike that you could start on and have a lot of fun just fine. My friend Ryan started out on an MT-07 and he is still alive and kicking today on a Daytona. So if you're just starting to get into motorcycles and you want to have a motorcycle that you can keep for a long period of time without getting sick of it, please check out an MT-07. great bikes. I will always be an advocate for them, and you can always sell it later for pretty much what you bought it for. So, and number 2 on this list is, of course, you guys are gonna be like, roll your eyes at this one, I already know, but it's going to be this bike, a Ducati, specifically the Panigale version of the V4. And you're gonna find out why I say specifically in a little bit here. Oh man, why'd you pull out? You really had to come across right when I'm leaving. All right, buddy. There's so much dirt on the road from the stupid storm. Now, again, I get people are going to probably roll their eyes at this. Like, oh, it's a Ducati. Like, you're just for the brand or whatever. No, this bike is not like a Ferrari. You don't buy it because it is just a spicier version of the competitors. It is a better version than the competitors. There is no sport bike on the entire market that even comes close to the feeling of this bike, besides maybe an RSV4, but even that doesn't even come close. That is probably just the closest feeling bike because it's also a V4, but when it really comes down to it, this bike is still gonna beat it every single day. The last sport bike I bought before this bike, well, I guess it was my S1000, but the bike that was closest to this motorcycle before I bought this one was my Yamaha R1. Now, I get the Yamaha R1 has a huge cult following in the social media world. I get why. I mean, it's cool. It's very cyberpunk looking, has a great sound, one of the best sounding bikes in the market, has a great track history, and a lot of YouTubers have it, and people like it. It's cheap to own, cheap to buy. I mean, you can find them on Marketplace for pretty cheap. However, after riding this bike and an R1 back to back, I can guarantee you that this bike blows it out of the water. In terms of riding feel, how fast it feels, how fast it actually is. I mean, this bike has like 20 horsepower on the R1. The electronics are way better. How it feels through a corner and the way it just glides through a corner, this beats it. Even this bike with the base suspension feels better than the R1. Now, sound is subjective. I think I've personally come to like this sound a little bit better, the way it switches between 2 and 4 cylinders. I think it has a little bit more character. I'll leave that up to you. I think you just kind of have to ride them in person and see how you feel. But the throttle feel, the downforce from the winglets, you actually feel that when you're going fast enough. The brakes are better. Now, some of the stuff you can upgrade on a base model R1, but like in terms of what you get out of the box, this is better. I'm not trying to sound pretentious. I think a lot of people have the misconception of saying Ducati is like the Ferrari brand, that like, oh, they just make something different and slap a bigger price tag on it. No, I think Ducati just has a way higher passion for making a better performing motorcycle. And I think it shows, especially when Yamaha is discontinuing the R1 due to lack of sales. Meanwhile, Ducati is continuing to push out newer and better versions of the Ducati V4. It's not to say the R1 is a fantastic motorcycle and it's still on sale today, but I'm not going to sit here and deny the fact that this bike is better. And there's a reason why I sold my R1 for this bike. But just from my own opinion, from owning and riding an Yamaha R1 for about 5,000 miles last year and owning this bike for about 1,000 miles this year, this bike has turned me into a way better rider in general. And someone's calling me, and I don't know who. I get the price tags on these can probably be a really big turnoff for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, these really aren't beginner bikes, so if you're going to be spending a lot of money on a motorcycle, I think it's worth maybe extending the wallet a little bit to get something like this, especially if it's like a 3rd or 4th bike. You're spending a little bit more, might as well spend a little bit more and get something better anyway. That's just my opinion. That's if you're like just buying new, because a brand new R1's like 19 grand now. I don't know, at that point, it just kind of becomes your own opinion. Like, what do you want to spend your money on? I'm sorry, guys. There's one more thing I forgot to mention about the Panigale V4, or just the Ducati V4s in general. This is something I didn't get to mention. I wanted to mention it and I didn't get to when I was out riding. So the reliability of the Ducati V4 motor. So I get like mine only has a few miles on it, so like people are really unsure of the reliability of this motor. So I get like this bike only has less than 1,000 miles, and so like it having not any problems, that should be a given. But I'm still pretty sure that these bikes are extremely reliable because of this. So I have a friend who also has a base model Ducati Panigale V4 just like this. His looks a little bit different, but he has an aftermarket exhaust on there and an aftermarket tune, not the Ducati exhaust and the Ducati tune. Now his bike, he took it to the track, and somehow, I'm assuming with the tune that he put on it, it over revved by over 2,000 RPM. That bike hit around 17,000 RPM, something like that. I could be wrong, but basically the bike money shifted, which by that much RPM, any other motor should have blown up, like absolutely shot something through the block, but his bike didn't. All his bike did is cook a water pump. Most bikes these days have plastic water pumps, that way like if there's overheating, the water pump fails before any damage actually occurs to the motor. So that's like a fine, like that's whatever, that can be replaced. But the fact is, the expensive bits, like the motor and the metal and all that stuff, is totally fine after over revving by I think around 2,000 RPM, which is insane. insane. I see so many other leader bikes these days having problems with blowing up motors, like making too much power. They're blowing up, snapping crankshafts. This bike isn't. The only reliability problems I see with this bike are the pieces that are meant to fail before any catastrophic damage happens to the rest of the motor. And so I think that Ducati overbuilt these motors. So I think like it's very rare these days that a company does that. But I think that's the case with this bike. These are insanely big motors. These are like 1100cc, 1150cc motors. Way overbuilt. Considering that my friend over-revved his by that much and the motor is still working to this day, I think that's something to talk about. Not to mention, he also had it covered under warranty, which is, I think, incredibly nice of Ducati considering the circumstances there. I don't know, hearing about that interaction, I think more people need to hear about that. Them honoring the warranty, even though he had aftermarket stuff done, was incredibly, like, I don't think they legally had to do that. But they still did, out of the kindness of Ducati's heart, I guess. And so I just think that more people need to hear about that type of experience, because that's not something a lot of bike manufacturers would do these days. And plus, with all these bikes blowing up these days, all these like newer leader bikes blowing up from all these even Japanese companies, like especially the R1. I hear so many new R1s blowing up these days. Meanwhile, here's a company that's overbuilding their motors and also replacing them under warranty. It's like, it's a lot more sense here. I just had to throw that in there because it wouldn't make much sense otherwise. Do you want to save a little bit of money, get an R1, or do you want to spend a little bit more and get an objectively better bike? It's your call. Gotta watch out for the sticks. What's going on? Sounds good. Hey, watch out for the sticks, man. They're everywhere. Yeah, you too, guys. And I just want to say, mayhaps I'm being a little bit too harsh on the R1. If I do have something nice to say about the R1 is it's probably a better street bike than this bike. But if your goal is to find a street bike that is also doubles as a 1000, like I said, an S1000 is going to kill that every single time as well. So, or like, I don't know, a Street Fighter or something. Like, I don't, like, there's just better street bikes than the R1. This is a better track bike than the R1, so that's why it's like the R1 doesn't really fit on the list at all. Like street riding, if this is street riding and this is track bike, this bike is like this, the R1 is like this, and the S1000 is like this. So it's like it exists in a weird place, and when this bike is just better than it at it, then it just, I don't know, it just doesn't fit in this weird new world of sport bikes that we have. Again, great bike. If you don't want to spend all the money on something like this, then yes, it's a great alternative. But this is a list about the best of the best, really going to show in this last bike that we're going to talk about. And so finally, the best bike, the best motorcycle that I've ridden that you can buy on the market today is going to be a brand new Ducati Diavel V4. What, dude? That makes no sense. Why would you say that? That's a cruiser. Ew. Why would you say that? That makes no sense. That's right. I'm doing the speed limit. Yeah. So I think a cruiser or a cruiser-esque motorcycle is one of the best bikes that you can buy on the market today, which is very weird coming from a 22-year-old sport bike rider. And it's a bike I don't even own, so why would I say it's the best if I don't even own it? Well, I'm gonna be real with you, I kind of want one. I took one for a test ride at Ducati Cleveland not too long ago, and it is an amazing motorcycle. So the Diavel basically has the same motor that's in this bike right there, except for the fact that it has spring valves as opposed to Desmo valves. So the benefit to that is that it has 36,000 miles. What's going on? Valve service intervals, which I don't know if you know anything about motorcycles, but valve services are some of the worst, most annoying services to do on a bike, because you usually have to tear apart the entire bike in order to get under here and service that stuff. On this bike, it's every 15,000 miles. On the Diavel, it's every 36,000 miles. That is an insanely long time for a motorcycle. So it may not rev as high as this bike. This bike revs to, I think, 14.5, and the Diavel only revs to about 12.5. The power in the Diavel is going to be way more usable on the street than this bike. This bike, if you're doing legal speeds, you're basically staying in first gear the entire time, if not second on or third on the highway, and that sucks. And I'm going to be real with you, people won't buy these bikes to do legal speeds. You go fast, but to get to that place that you want to use all this power safely, which is what I do on the street, I'm not doing it in and out of traffic. I'm not doing it usually where people can see me. It's still dangerous. I mean, if I come up on a car or a person pulling out of their driveway or deer or something, you're usually going pretty fast, dude. And so the Diavel allows you to basically use the motor that's on this bike in a safer fashion while being way more comfortable while doing it. It also has great suspension, the exact same brakes that are on this bike. Everything's just beefier to handle the extra weight. So you basically get all the torque, all the beefiness, the sound, all the great tech that comes on a 1000cc bike, but on a bike that more or less does 600cc stuff while being insanely comfortable. There's no other bike on the market like it. You could argue like naked bikes, like naked 1000s, like the MT-10, the Street Fighter V4, like they're close. But the thing is, the Street Fighter doesn't have the 36,000 mile service intervals. The Diavel is more comfortable than any of the naked bikes on the market, and it's going to be way more comfortable taking a passenger, and you're going to look, in my opinion, a little bit cooler while doing it. And so that's why I think the Diavel, a cruiser, is the best motorcycle on the market. You can't beat it. Besides, maybe a lighter bike like a Supermoto would make a little bit more sense, or like quick trips and stuff because of the weight on the Diavel. But in terms of doing, if you have a chart that lays everything out in terms of comfort, speed, torque, riding fast ability, like everything, the Diavel is the top of the chart for everything in my opinion, except for price. It is an expensive motorcycle. We're talking 27 grand MSRP plus $6,000 for an exhaust, the official Ducati exhaust if you want that. I usually wouldn't recommend getting aftermarket stuff on a Ducati because warranty becomes questionable. And I've seen people with reliability on these bikes. They have perfect reliability when you get the official Ducati stuff and tunes and all that. But as soon as you go aftermarket, then you start running into some issues. So I've had no problems with this Ducati V4. This is probably, like, in terms of every single bike I've ever bought brand new, I've had some sort of warranty work on it. This bike has not given me a single issue yet, which is crazy considering Ducati usually gets a bad rep for reliability. I've not had to bring this bike in once ever since I bought it, besides having to bring it in for its first service. That is impressive, Ducati, and I'll give them that. And I can only imagine the Diavel with the Gran Turismo motor instead of the Desmo Sedici, I think it's called. I can only imagine it's going to be way more reliable than even this is, because it's a lower stressed motor, it revs lower, and has spring valves as opposed to Desmo valves. So I hope one day I can get my hands on a Diavel. I don't know if anytime soon, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to have this bike and a Diavel. I think like you have to make the decision to pick one over the other, but maybe one day, who knows. Alright, let's finish up the video real quick because I want to go enjoy my ride. If you guys enjoyed it, if you guys agree with my list, make sure you hit the like button. If you don't agree, leave a comment of why. I think an honorable mention that I would like to say of a bike that's not on sale anymore, but I would definitely include on this list, I would like replace one of the bikes on this list if it still was, the Triumph Daytona 675. One of my favorite bikes I ever owned. I did sell it, unfortunately. I would totally love to buy another one if I ever found a good one for sale. Problem is, they're hard to come by. They don't sell them anymore. They do sell the 765, and you can find 765 Daytonas on sale, like from the 2020 version, all day. But I'm not really interested in those. I like the 675s, but they don't make them anymore. So this list is about bikes that are on sale today that you can go out and buy brand new. And yeah, so that bike doesn't make the list. But yeah, if you guys have any bikes that you would have liked to see on this list that I didn't mention, I'm sorry. These are bikes that I have ridden personally or owned in the past that I wanted to include on this list, because I'm not going to put a bike on here that I haven't ridden or I haven't owned, because that wouldn't make any sense. Like, I haven't ridden the Kawasaki ZX-10R. I haven't ridden the Gixxer 1000. Those are two of the leader bikes I have not ridden. So I doubt that they would blow my mind if I rode them, but I just want that to be known. I've ridden a lot of the smaller bikes. I had a Anagram for a bit. Like, I get those. They're not one of the greatest bikes ever, so I'm not going to include that on the list. Yeah, maybe you hate my opinion. You just want to get it out in the comments. Go for it, dude. Let me know that I'm stupid for not including your favorite bike ever. And, you know, even though I've been riding for about 5 years, my riding, I still have a lot to learn when it comes to riding in terms of, like, adventure bikes. I have yet to ride a lot of those, or even I only have ridden a handful of Harleys, and I want to expand more of that, because I don't want to be so closed-minded when it comes to bikes anymore. I want to try to see why people like motorcycles, because originally I would have completely written off the Diavel V4 in the past, and now it's at the top of my list in terms of favorite bikes ever. So oh lord, see, that's what I'm talking about, dude. Hello, the pack of scooters. Yeah, dude, that's what I'm talking about. There's a whole pack of cycles I would have never thought people are into those. That is awesome. So yeah, I do have a lot to learn, and I'm going to try to expand my horizons a bit this year. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Like the video, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm going to go enjoy my ride now. Bye.